Hi everyone, welcome to Spill the Chai, where mentally ill psychology students talk about psychology. In today's podcast, we have Miss Rain
Hi.
and Miss Tulsidas Maximus Baggins the Third.
How did you get that name, Mr. Sitas?
Okay, so I had like audio visual hallucinations of like this tall creature with like really long hair, better hair than mine, and I named him Tulsidas and Maximus because I like Lord Farquaad from Shrek. He's oh my god, and then
Shrek Stan.
yes, 100%. I never looked at a man after I looked at Shrek. And Baggins, because Lord of the Rings is like a huge part of my childhood. The third, because it sounds slay.
Because you are a slave.
I know, Queen, I know. We'll be talking about mental illness. We'll be talking about how mental illness has been turned into somewhat of an aesthetic on social media, about how there's so many people faking mental illness, specifically dissociative identity disorder and Tourette's. So, based off social media, we know that the most recent, most commonly used piece of social media now for information is TikTok. And we know that about 800 million monthly users have been reported as of November 2021, and 738 million first time installs were made in 2019. So we've kind of entered this era a long while ago where we're kind of living in a bit of a double-sided reality where like half of our reality is online and the other half is offline.
Yeah.
So we realize how we have so many micro celebrities and so many influencers right now that are the impact that they're having on our lives, the way we are made to compare ourselves to them, and the way the more we watch a certain type of influencer, the more the algorithm makes us fall deeper into it. Keeping the amount of impact that these people are having on our lives in mind, I think it's so important for them to consider what exactly they're putting out there, because one, majority of the people who are using TikTok are teenagers, they're young adults. Secondly, we're living half online, half offline. And thirdly, based on how we're falling deeper into the algorithm, I think it's pretty understandable how much of an impact this can
Yeah.
have on people.
Yeah. I mean, they're called influencers for a reason.
Yeah.
Because they influence you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they influence you.
Yeah, exactly. So we also know that there's a recent paper that reported that they searched up a huge bunch of like mental health hashtags, and what they realized is majority of the people who are putting up these mental health hashtags are not even mental health practitioners.
Exactly.
So you're adding that to this already huge mix of like living half on, half off, the amount of impact influencers are having. Keeping that in mind, it's such a dangerous place to be. And we also know that faking illnesses is not a new thing. We know that people used to fake cancer a while ago, and to the point that academic journals literally need a name for them called Munchausen. I think
Munchausen.
for quite a bit, but with this new culture of turning everything into aesthetics and so on, I think it's much worse considering that mental health has never been as talked about
Yeah.
as it is now.
And even if it's talked about more, the information put out there is not always
Exactly.
correct.
Majority of the people who are putting that information out there are not mental health
Professionals.
Exactly. So, there's like
With the
this.
media, yeah, like with the media, you don't know what's real and what's not anymore.
Also, you need to keep in mind that a mental health practitioner, the way the algorithm is built, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you're more likely to get famous if you're a controversial TikToker who's faking a mental health illness rather than a mental health professional who's actually talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the thing. Another fascinating topic. So yeah, that's the thing. Another fascinating topic that me and Miss Rain were talking about a while ago is the concept of social contagion. I think I'm pronouncing it well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pronounce it, but basically, we talked about how it's a viral topic, everyone is spreading it, and most of the people that are using the hashtag mental health illness awareness and stuff like that are not even professionals. Studies have found that not only is it viral, but it is somehow contagious. It's very clear that mental illness has become a trend nowadays.
For sure.
That's why, I mean, that's obviously why people are faking it, to get attention, to get clout, and so on. But also, it can actually be contagious.
I think the whole point of social contagion is if one person does it, they open a route for other people to do it too. You see people turning it into trends. Mental health illness was not a trend before, but it just took one person to make that opening, and it's just gone viral.
Yeah.
No matter what the motivation is. So we had this thing called the Blue Whale game a few years ago, I think 2016, 2018, around the time. Yeah, so there was this game where you were told to do random things like waking up in the middle of the night and so on, and slowly they got more and more severe, like taking up a knife and cutting it. I don't remember how it went on, but it was very famous in the South Asian community.
Yeah.
The Arab and South Asian community.
And because we all know about peer pressure as well, like the people will be like, oh, I'm playing this game, so then other people will play this game too.
Just
cool
the need
and to fit in.
Yeah, just the need to fit in. So yeah, basically what happened is that people started committing suicide playing the game, and it just started getting banned in countries because of the risk it causes. So I think social contagion, one person starts self-harming in a school, the school is going to panic if they get, I mean, schools generally, they don't care. I don't think they do. But it just takes one person to make that difference. So regardless of whether or not they have that mental illness, there's this sense of trend and aesthetic that's going on. This is why you have sometimes high school students committing suicide in clusters.
Yeah.
So,
and like another way it could be contagious is that how, like, if someone has depression, people that are around are more likely to have it as well.
Exactly.
And like if you see someone that's cutting themselves, you're more likely to do it as well.
Exactly.
It can be contagious.
Now, we're not saying that the reason people are going through these things is because other people are... No, we're not saying that. We're simply saying that it does, you cannot deny, increase the chances that a person will go through with something like this. And so on. Like, we also have this, there's this particular forest in Japan where people go to suicide. Like, sometimes things just become... It's just social contagion where things just become contagious without them actually having the symptoms, just because, you know, for the hell of it, other people are doing it too.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a big part in how faking, specifically dissociative identity disorder and Tourette's, based on the paper, is one of the most fake disorders at the top across TikTok. I think this is how it becomes such a risk. And speaking about risk, not only do we understand the impact of it, but we have to understand the impact it's having on people who are actually mentally ill.
Yeah.
So me and Miss Rain were going through a few Quora responses on people who are talking about this faking of mental illness, and we read quite a few.
People who are faking these mental illnesses are invalidating how actual people that are diagnosed with it, and they're invalidating their experiences. They are giving out incorrect information in the world and just over-exaggerating the symptoms in general.
Beyond, like, we read another paper that said that the quality of people who are faking mental health disorders is they are just going above and beyond to exaggerate the symptoms. We were watching these videos on DID, I think we'll put them up. First of all, with dissociative identity disorders, you have these alters, these multiple personalities that are coming up. The whole point of disassociation is they are discontinuous experiences, memory-wise, stored in your brain. So you do not notice yourself. Like, I have been clinically diagnosed with dissociation as a symptom of one of my disorders. I go down, I have to get from point A to point B. I end up in a point C. I barely remember how I ended up in that point C because my brain just disassociated. And when we're talking about multiple personality disorder, and these people are not only is their brain leaving consciousness, but they are leaving it to an extent that there is another person there entirely. And up until recently, we believed that people with DID had different brain structures involved for each memory. Like, one alter had one part of one area for their memory, another alter had another area for their memory. Recently, we realized that this is not true. They might not consciously remember it, but the brain does store the memory within the same brain system.
And it has been found that other alters, which meaning other personalities, are not aware most of the time of like the other
Yeah,
personalities.
it's not found out. It's just general. I think anyone who has experienced DID will know. Again, you are shifting, you are turning into a completely different person. It's very rare that while some alters may communicate within the brain system, it's not very, very common. And it is especially not common that you're putting up different costumes for each alter. Like me and Miss Rain were watching this TikTok recently, and it was something.
Yeah. You cannot fake something you barely know is there and you barely remember.
Exactly.
There was this TikTok of a person faking DID. One of the alters, their name is Corpse Husband. I really don't think that your brain will create a personality
Yeah.
called Corpse Husband.
No, I mean, it's not even about the person. It's about how they're trying to act like they have DID, and they, after of something that you're not supposed to have a lot of conscious awarenesses of, they have their personalities in check. They have their own costumes, they have their own wigs, nicknames, these
Yeah.
personal styles. There was this one guy that drew an eye on his head. I think the Antichrist is real. And, ticks.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole point of dissociation is that you don't recall, you don't remember, you don't have control.
You're just losing concentration.
It just
and attention.
happens. It just happens like that. Like when you dissociate, it just happens like that. Like someone that dissociates that won't even remember or have the ability to change their clothes fast enough to suit the personality.
I don't even think it's up for discussion that you would be, oh, I'm disassociating, trying to get like my costume on. And this other thing with like TikTokers who try to fake having Tourette's. Wow.
Yeah, we saw a video of an actual person diagnosed with Tourette syndrome reacting to someone faking it. First of all, as we said before, they exaggerate the symptoms way too much and it's very prevalent.
He
And
was creating rhyming nursery rhymes. Like, he was like, Inky Pinky Ponky, and then suddenly a tick comes in and she's trying to rhyme it and with some ridiculous sentence, and we're supposed to believe that that's a tick. I can't.
yeah, and like also I noticed that he emphasized the point where tics, like it's uncontrollable, it just happens, right? So when there was in the video, this person was pretending to have tics while packing something, and they kept having it and it kept interrupting the packing, right? First of all,
How dare she put cute music in that?
second of all, the facial expression says that she's happy, she's smiling. If someone has tics and they're interrupting the process of you doing something, right? I don't think you're gonna be happy. I think you're gonna be annoyed and pissed off
I just
because you can't
think-
get something done, right?
I just think you're not gonna laugh when you throw a laptop across a room.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
I can't. And of course, the ridiculous part is that the general prevalence of Tourette syndrome as of 2015 was around 0.3% to 0.9% of children aged 5 to 17. And they may differentiate based on the population, based on the country we're talking about, but it's really not as prevalent as the people on TikTok are trying to
Yeah.
make it seem it is. The same thing with dissociative identity disorder. It affects approximately 1 to 3% of general population. Again, it can vary significantly, but it's sure as hell not enough to cover the number of TikTokers
Exactly.
that we have that are faking it.
It is too rare of a disorder to be this present in the media.
Exactly. No, and specifically what I would like to talk about is ADHD.
That has been very, very used a lot.
I cannot. Again, I'm clinically diagnosed with ADHD, and I had.
I mean, we can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I had like this quote unquote friend. He was the type of person who would take up any disorder that he would see online, like 1 or 2 videos on it, be like, oh, I have it. And I remember I waiting at the metro for him to come over, and I was walking around in circles again and again and again, and with like absolutely no care of what's going on, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And then he came over and he was like, I've been calling you from a distance for quite a while, and you didn't answer. And I was like, what's this person doing? Why are they going round and round in a circle? And I was like, I can't help it. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, so like this is an issue. And this guy casually, no chill, nothing. He just goes like, oh yeah, I have it too. And I was like, really? Because I generally like to see people in the neurodivergent coming. Big time golden retriever energy. Okay, so I was like, really? Okay, and I just went all over the place and I was like talking and being excited. And he was like, yeah, I have it. What's it called? And I was like, attention deficit hyperactivity. He was like, yeah, I have it too. And he has no, and mind you, I've known this person for like, I think you have it. And then she confirmed it. But does not go off topic to topic. We used to have this joke where we used to say, oh, she's zoned out now, because sometimes I just zone out and that's what I do, no attention. Does not have any, like, I used to sit and cry about how I keep forgetting things and stuff, like how it's impacting my school, how it's impacting my education.
Yeah, the whole point of disorders is that it's a disorder.
It's not something you're happy about.
Yeah, it's a disorder because it is affecting your life. For example, everyone has anxiety, but until it impacts your life to the point where you are no longer functional, then it's a disorder.
Exactly. Like, to the extent that I had to take a 4-hour break in between writing like a 24-hour exam just because I wanted to daydream. I don't think that's something to be happy about. It really affects your life. And to have person, and I went up to them, I think 3 months later, and I was like, look, I don't really appreciate the way you keep saying that you have ADHD, because you clearly do not have...
You're invalidating.
Yeah, you don't have any symptoms of it. And their response was to just start laughing at my face and being like, oh, you're too sensitive, you're taking it too seriously. And I couldn't take it after that time, because you're not realizing that the whole point we're talking about mental health illness online is to normalize it, is to humanize it.
It is an illness.
Yeah. And we're trying to humanize it. But what these people who are faking these mental health disorders are doing is they are completely and utterly dehumanizing it, exaggerating it all over the place. We're trying to remove a stigma. You're trying to justify the stigma. You know? So there's so much. And obviously we've been all over Reddit trying to find about different people's opinions on how they are taking this, and it's just really I read a story, I just told you about it a while ago.
Basically there was this girl that was talking to this guy that thought it was a girl that had like mental illness and stuff like that, but then later they were exposed and they found out that this was actually a guy. And there was no mental health diagnosis. There was no diagnosis whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think something she highlighted was these people may not have the mental health illness that they are faking, but there definitely is some issue. Now, again, I don't think that you have to have a mental health issue to
not
be an
necessarily.
Idiot.
Yeah.
I think being an idiot just comes naturally to some people.
Yeah, not necessarily, but this can definitely be a huge indicator for some kind of, I don't know, childhood trauma, childhood seeking, Delulu disorder.
So obviously I think what we know is this has been going on for a long time. Like I think we spoke about it, how the
Munchausen
on the internet, and it was labeled as Munchausen I think a few years ago within academic articles.
Yeah.
And we actually have a scale. Back in 1995, there was a scale called Structured Interview of Reported Symptoms Scale. So it was used to detect if people had who were faking mental illnesses, or were their symptoms legit. And what it found out was that people who really had mental illness were, obviously they have the symptoms of mental illness, but people who were faking it tend to exaggerate it, which is something we've learned. And another paper by Giedenhagen, I think I pronounced his name right, it's discussing evidence that the recent spate of new onset severe tics are a form of mass psychogenic illness facilitated by social media networks. and it's like a phenomena that's been labeled mass social media and induced illness.
Wait, was Tourette's genetic?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it
Yeah.
has. It's a neurological disorder.
I think there was a genetic factor to Tourette's syndrome as well. So the fact that people are faking this is very indicating of how, like,
Just how far they're going
Yeah.
to prove their idiocy.
exactly, like,
Yeah.
you cannot, like, it's genetic. It has a genetic factor, like, you can't just, you have
Yeah,
it.
I'm unsure about the genetic factor, but I know it's a neurological factors.
I think there was a genetic factor.
Right. No, there probably is. I'm
Yeah.
not aware of it. But yeah, and they've been causing this mass social media induced illnesses, wherein, like me and Miss Rain were speaking about before, it's just the need to feel included. There was this recent study where they took in a few group of women and then they did makeup so as to show bruises on their faces. And they were like, you go into interviews and see if you feel that you are being discriminated against because of the bruises. But what happened is, just before they go to the interview, they were like, oh, we'll just do some touch-up makeup. And the makeup team, without letting the females know, they removed the bruises completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they went in for the interview and they were like, did you face any discrimination? And like these females came with like a huge bunch of discrimination that they have faced. They quoted like the most normal things that the interviewer said to them, and they're like, oh, they said this because of discrimination. And I think that highlights just how much the power of, if you are telling some people that they are discriminated and they are oppressed against, you really internalize it. And I was
The power of media. That's why they call them influencers, because
Yeah.
they
I'm a listener on this app. Basically, it's a mental health support app. And they came up and they were telling me that they had OCD, and they were stating all these symptoms that have absolutely nothing to do with OCD. And I asked them a few questions from the questionnaire that I have. There's an OCD questionnaire that I have, and I asked them a few questions from it, and they were like, no to every symptom. And then they were like, I've spent the last 3 months researching it, I know a lot about it. So I told them, because they seem like a pretty they seem pretty thoughtful. So I asked them, like, do you think it's maybe possible that you might not actually have had these symptoms, but you've kind of internalized them within you? And then they just stopped for a second. They're like, yeah, I think I may have done that. Because I was like, did you have these symptoms before you started researching them? And they were like, no. So
yeah.
again,
you can internalize it for sure.
yeah, again, it just comes down to, you are falling in the way the algorithms are built. You're falling into this hole, and especially if you are falling into a hole of misinformation, then that's where you're falling. You start ending up, even if you may not have these illnesses, you start internalizing them. And I think that's not only harmful for the people who are being exposed to this misinformation, rather there are people who actually have the mental health illnesses, and because the way that they're exaggerating these symptoms, there are people who might actually have mental illnesses, and they're just looking at it and they're being like, I don't have it that bad. Like, I don't start shaking and biting my nails just because someone's playing a song called My Anxiety Creeps Inside of Me. Have you seen those TikToks?
Yeah.
It's like they put in person with anxiety, person without anxiety. And by the way, anxiety is quote unquote because none of those people have anxiety. And it's just they're playing this music and they're like, I've heard people who like listen to the song and have anxiety kind of go crazy. This chick, she put on a blanket and she literally started like shaking the blanket to and fro until she fell off the bed. And she's like, oh man, I didn't experience that song to affect me that much. I'm like,
Dude.
no, no, that's not. So like people who actually have
Yeah.
anxiety, they see garbage like that on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, like, see, in general, everyone has anxiety, right? But like, there's a difference between having like experiencing
disorder.
and having a disorder. As I said before, it is only a disorder when it affects your life and it causes you to be dysfunctional. Yeah, like there's a difference between you being depressed and having depression. You know?
Yeah.
So
You feeling
yeah.
depressed and actually having depression.
And another example of people faking mental illness and stuff. I mean, this isn't exactly a mental illness. It's a neurological condition. See, I'm diagnosed with epilepsy. So basically, people with this condition get seizures and have like excessive electricity in the brain, right? So someone that can fake epilepsy can just go into like, can just fall on the ground and just like pretend they're having a seizure. Like, and like it doesn't work like that. And people forget, people may have it severe, some people may have it mild, like, but personally for me, when like my condition is thankfully not severe. Like, I thankfully haven't had a seizure in 5 years. I'm not sure, but
It's not as common as
like
people think.
Exactly. Yeah, so people can be living their normal lives and still have epilepsy, like me, for example. And like when it comes to a seizure, this is your body going into shock. Like, you cannot fake your body going absolutely insane and just falling on the ground and shaking. You know what I mean? There are also like specific times where you can have where you can get a seizure and where you can't. Like, personally for me, it was really based off my sleep. Like, if I got a seizure, it would be either after I woke up or before I woke up. So yeah. So yeah, you can clearly see how people can over-exaggerate a disorder and a condition, and yeah.
And how that impacts people. Now, going down to why this happens, like we said, it could be social media induced illnesses. We know that according to the paper by Gedenhagen, they went on to discuss factitious disorder. Now, if you don't know about factitious disorder, it's basically where people start faking illnesses. It couldn't be mental health, it could be any other form of illness. They go as far as putting in as far as playing with their urine samples, putting in drugs into their samples, and so on. So there's a lot of conviction. Now, that and Gedenhagen discussed factitious disorder in their paper, and then they also discussed how they could propose a social media associated abnormal illness behavior. They've labeled it as a symptom, and they could take this and propose it to be a form of factitious disorder. The thing about factitious disorder is, I think people are convinced that they have that disorder.
Yeah.
I think
they've convinced themselves.
They have convinced themselves. And I do not think on social media, sometimes when I see the ridiculousness with which they put on the exaggerated symptoms, I'm not sure if they're convinced themselves or if they're just doing it for clout. So yeah, there's this other study where how you use social media is generally not influenced by your personality traits. It's rather influenced by what's your motivation. And again, the whole point of factitious disorder is they do it because they think that they're getting something that they will not get otherwise. It could be attention, it could be the need to control, because a lot of people with factitious disorder, sometimes they invent an illness and project it on others. So they don't have it, but I think there's this amazing book. I think it's a series too. It's called Sharp Objects. This is not a sponsor.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah, I loved it. Spoiler alert. The book was amazing, and basically what happens is the mother, she invents in her head that her daughter has a severe illness, and she goes as far as playing with the medical samples.
Oh yeah, there is a disorder for that, by the way.
That is factitious disorder. So, like, again, what comes down to is that they generally believe it, and they believe they have it so that they can feel the sense of the fact that they are controlling their child and their little girl is always going to be with them. I think that's what it was about. So, again, it all comes down to that. We have another paper by Montag et al., Montag and his colleagues.
Yeah, we'll put the references there.
Yeah, we'll put the references in. But again, this also talks about reinforcement as like a driving force for faking disorders. Again, comes down to a lot of symptoms alongside factitious, but it's just the extent to which these people go to fake their disorders and so on. I think you need to keep in mind that these people going ahead and faking them, these people might have their own issues too. There's no way that a normal person with like secure self-esteem and so on will go out of their
And
way.
secure attachment
Yeah.
would do that
Yeah,
and go out their way
yeah,
to
there's
just...
no one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole message of the podcast is don't do it.
And keep